you slept with the roommate?
Yes, Mom, I did.
After she complained that he was touching her at first and she didn't like it, she ended up sleeping with him afterwards.
What was he doing wrong then?
He was doing the same thing.
I was working.
My husband have a young girl in the room. So I went over myself, knocked on the door. So he opened the door, I went in there, she laying in the bed under the cover, and I'm like asking him, what's going on? He's like, well, we doing music, sit down.
I'm over my boyfriend's house. He comes up there.
So you slept with him that day?
Yes, I did.
So you were sleeping with your boyfriend and also basically sleeping with Mr. Golden around the same time?
Yeah.
Ms. Ramirez believes that her fiancé is the father of her 2-year-old son and 1-year-old daughter, but he's denied paternity throughout the relationship. Mr. DeLeon, her fiancé, says the reason he cannot be the father of those kids is because Ms. Ramirez cheated on him with 7 other men during their relationship. Just one question here. Was that all at once, or it happened separately? Because one is somehow worse than the other.
Take me back to the circumstances that you found out you were pregnant with your first child.
Well, at the time, just to say right now, Your Honor, that I'm very disappointed in Gilbert for everything. Gilbert was homeless at the time when I first met him, and I asked my mom if he can move in with us, and she said yes. My mom saw that he was smoking weed. That was a big no. She told him to leave.
However, Mr. DeLeon says he was never given this choice. He insists that the baby was pushed on him, and no one told him that there was a chance he wasn't the father. He insists that he had to find out that Ms. Ramirez was cheating on his own, and that he was never told about it. He said he only found out the truth through text messages.
So at that point, you knew that you may or may not be Ian's father.
Yes, that's when I began having my doubts about paternity.
But it wasn't the voluntary disclosure that Ms. Ramirez suggests.
When she found out that she was pregnant, she told me I was the dad. And as I found all this information out, I had doubts. I mean, if she slept with other guys during the same week that our child was supposedly conceived.
The incredible thing here is that Mr. DeLeon says he has a very close bond with 2 of the children. He even says he was the one who delivered them by hand and cut their umbilical cord. So it's clear that he wants to be their father, but he isn't sure whether he is really their father since Ms. Ramirez has essentially been giving it up like party favors. But what does Ms. Ramirez have to say about this?
At the time, Gilbert was working. He wasn't showing me the affection and everything. He wasn't being the man that I wanted at the time. He was working this construction job. He would leave at 6 in the morning. He would get home at 12 at night, smelling like weed.
I worked all day.
What you were saying is he wasn't just working.
He was
using that excuse and was doing other things.
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon says he found out that Ms. Ramirez's mother had kicked him out of the house and had to move on. He found a friend who worked in apartment complexes and moved into that friend's house. Ms. Ramirez then called Mr. DeLeon saying that her mother didn't want her in the house either, so he took it upon himself to house her in his friend's apartment. One day after work, a neighbor told him that his friend had boasted about sleeping with Ms. Ramirez.
With your roommate?
Yes, and how I found out that, I got off work and the neighbor that lives right downstairs across from my boss, because my boss lived right downstairs from us, came out and said, hey, I'm not trying to cause no problems between you and your relationship, but this is something you should know. Your roommate just came down bragging about how he just did your chick and all this other stuff, and I said, I was in denial.
It's hard to think of something more disgusting than that. She slept with her boyfriend's roommate after her boyfriend housed her when her mother kicked her out. Why did Ms. Ramirez do all this? You may wonder. Well, her excuse is as good as excuses go.
And a family, so what was wrong with that?
He was working all the time, and it's still to this day, it is still like that.
But I'm saying, what would then lead you to sleep with the roommate?
Just to. It was just to, because I didn't want to be at my mom's house. I didn't care if I was with him. It was just to be away.
Mr. DeLeon is really the most patient man in the world. We cannot imagine any other man going this far for a woman who's gone this wild. At this point, it seems pretty obvious that it's likely that both Miss Ramirez's kids may not belong to Mr. DeLeon after all. In fact, we would be extremely surprised if they did.
So when did you find out she was pregnant and Annalise may not have been yours?
Well, after we had lived in the apartment for a couple of months, we got into arguments and whatnot, and she moved back home. We hadn't talked for a couple of months because we got in an argument. I get a call from her stating, hey, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, okay, why does that concern me?
Now, Ms. Ramirez says that all of this is simply par for course, since Mr. DeLeon promised her that he would always be there for her. Okay, maybe he did promise that, but we are pretty sure he didn't promise that he would be there for her if she slept with multiple men and may have had kids by them.
Are you taking for granted that he keeps taking you back? He keeps saying he's gonna be there?
And that's what I
Okay, because
believe.
now this is child number 2 and more doubt.
And that's what I believe, Your Honor, that she kept on taking advantage of me. Because after this child was born, no more than a couple months later, she ended up leaving me and telling me that these kids aren't mine over an argument because I'm working too much.
The picture is one of another man holding the baby Ms. Ramirez supposedly delivered for Mr. DeLeon, and the man in the picture captioned it with "my baby girl." In a letter he sent to Mr. DeLeon, the man also says he will do the job of a father better and will take care of his kids better. That's a lot to take in, and more than enough reason for Mr. DeLeon to doubt the paternity of those 2 kids.
My parents have their doubts because of the stuff
when
that
they
she's
wanna
done
be
to me.
grandparents.
So they doubt that these are my
Well,
children.
she just said she understands why you have doubt.
And she says about my parents don't like her because of the stuff that she's done to me in the past. They had no problems with her before. Once they found out she was cheating on me, they didn't want anything to do with her.
Of course it matters. Now, let's find out the truth behind all of this. Who's really the father of these kids?
Mr. De Leon, you are his father. Let's go to the second results. Mr. De Leon, you are her father. You are their.
Thank you so much. That means the world to me at this point in time.
And Ms. Ramirez, you are one lucky lady. Very differently, and you understand this, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It's probably best not to accompany your adulterous husband to paternity court, and even if you do that, it's probably best not to shout and scream throughout the entire hearing. But that's precisely what Mrs. McKinley did with her husband of 17 years, Mr. McKinley. She was certain that her husband wasn't the father of Ms. Thompson's child, and she was determined to prove it.
You admit that Ms. Thompson was an affair gone wrong, and you say Ms. Thompson needs to leave you and your wife of 17 years alone and find her baby's father. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Your Honor.
Now, Ms. Thompson, how did you end up in a relationship with a married man?
Okay, I ended up in a relationship with Terrell, and I wouldn't consider it a relationship. I would consider it friends with benefit.
This case quickly devolves into an argument that even the judge can't keep up with once Mrs. McKinley enters the frame.
We protected ourselves majority of the time. I had been drinking, and we had messed around. I wasn't sober enough to make the right decisions, and he knew that.
That's a lie.
So he took
That's a
advantage
lie.
of that.
That's a lie.
Okay,
Your Honor.
so wait a minute. Did you know he was married?
He told me that he was separated,
She
which
lied.
was
She
true.
know, Your Honor.
They
And I-
weren't together.
She
She
lied.
stayed in a
That's a lie.
shed,
She lied.
and he stayed in a
She
room
lied.
and
She
escalated
lied, Your
out.
Honor.
Mrs. McKinley seems aware that her husband indeed slept with Miss Thompson, but she somehow doesn't think that means he could be the father of her child. And you've just got to ask yourself why. If she accepts that her husband cheated on her with a side chick, why is she with him in court? And why is she taking his side? Does she just love him that much?
Ms. McKinley,
Yes,
I want to know
ma'am.
from you, how did you find out about all
Ma'am,
this?
okay, ma'am. One of the girls up there told me that my husband have a young girl in the room. So I knew I had a picture how the girl looked. So I went over myself, knocked on the door. He asked who was it. I didn't answer. So he opened the door. I went in there. She laying in the bed, under the cover.
Now, Miss Thompson is saying that she wasn't really a side chick to Mr. McKinley, and he was actually treating her like his girlfriend. And that makes sense. If someone takes you to see their family, they are probably serious about you. But how serious could they really be about you if they already had a wife for 17 years?
He grew into it, but when he was born, it's genetic things. I asked Terrell about my son. I told him about it. Oh, yeah, that's me. So if that ain't your baby, take your shoe off. Let me see your toes.
You want to see my
Yeah,
toe?
let me see. Take them off. You got on, did you put on socks today?
So you say the overlapping of toes,
Did not
stacked
come from
toe,
me.
and it didn't come from you.
He admitted that he had.
For some reason, Mr. McKinley doesn't want to show us his toes in court. At this point, you kind of start to side with Ms. Thompson against Mr. McKinley and his crazy wife. But it appears that Mrs. McKinley is even crazier than anyone thought.
So you got a text, and it was this picture, and the caption was
Saying Legend's
Legend's
real
real
father.
father.
Yes,
Goodbye.
yes,
Goodbye.
I have nothing to hide. I did not say that. You can go ahead and prove it.
So
Go get it.
how do you
Go do
think
what
they
gotta
got
do.
this text if it didn't come from you?
This woman made a fake page. I have my page private. That's how I know it got to be an app because I
Oh,
didn't
you're
write
saying they made this,
it.
they
You know, that's
created
right,
this.
They made it up because she made up a whole fake page.
Ms. Thompson can cope all she likes about not wanting too much from her supposed baby daddy, but the fact remains that she slept with him and had a pretty real relationship with him. And she did all of this while knowing he had a wife and no money. So all of her mouthing off and going wild is really not necessary, and the judge tells her exactly that.
As you speak, at first I wanted you to get the chip off your shoulder because I thought maybe after you got it off, we could get to really who you are and how this happened. All in my mind as I'm saying is, what are we gonna do?
I didn't
like,
expect you
how
to
do we
correct
do
me.
that? Of course you did.
I made a mistake.
Of course
course you did. Now, if you all are trying to see the child, that's what I want to get to next. Legends born.
Mr. McKinley says he's only seen his kid, Legend, 3 times in the 6 months he's been alive. He wants to change that, but Miss Thompson has other thoughts on her mind. She doesn't want Mrs. McKinley to come around her kid, and she also doesn't want the judge to feel sorry for her.
This child may or may not be your biological
That's
child.
what I'm saying.
That probably is the most sense you've made today.
And it didn't make no sense to me because it was not
of
true.
Of course it didn't, Miss Thompson.
It wasn't true.
Of course
it was not true. You don't have to feel sorry for me because God has been blessing me and my children, and I have been taking care of them. I put a roof over their head, and I don't have to explain it.
Miss Thompson has gotten her moment to say what she wants to say, and now it's time for us to get to the truth. Is the child for Mr. McKinley or not?
Mr. McKinley, you are the father.
And he's a handsome baby. He get compliments all the time, so I never did want drama. It's just hurt me when I ask for something and they don't do it.
I wish I had little boxes and I could wrap it up for you all, put a bow on it, and send you out like life is perfect now.
If a woman sets your clothes on fire, you may want to run away from her. However, Mr. Golden isn't doing that. Instead, he's trying to prove that he's the father of her 9-month-old child, Andrea. He's also suing for $998 of clothing that his girlfriend, Ms. Campbell, set on fire. Ms. Campbell, on the other hand, says Andrea doesn't belong to Mr. Golden and says that once she proves that it's not his baby, she never wants to hear from him again.
All right, so Mr. Golden, why do you think Miss Campbell is denying that you're Andrea's father?
Because she hate me.
Really? Explain.
She hate me because I slept with her best friend.
You slept with her best friend?
Yes, ma'am. But I did it to get back.
You did? Well,
Yeah.
why would you do that?
I did it to get back out of the spice because she used to do crazy stuff to me as far as burning clothes and...
Ms. Campbell says she was never popping up anywhere. She says that Mr. Golden saw their relationship as a game, and that sounds true. If he didn't, why would he be sleeping with her best friend?
So why are you sleeping with her best friend and why are you popping up places? What is going on?
She crazy.
Your Honor, the reason why I burnt his clothes is because he told me he was going to walk to the store, right? But usually it's me and him walking to the store.
Yes.
He's walking with a girl, like close, side by side, close. So I walks up to him, I'm like, what you doing? Who is she? He turned around, started running.
That's right. Miss Campbell burnt those clothes, and she isn't apologizing for it. Mr. Golden believes that this hate in Miss Campbell's heart is the reason why she's decided to not acknowledge that Andrea is his biological daughter. Miss Campbell, on the other hand, says that Mr. Golden isn't even the type to be a father.
Did you have sex with him?
Yes.
Without
I did.
protection?
Yes, but it wasn't around the time when my baby was conceived, when she was
It wasn't. So, Mr. Golden, did she tell you she was pregnant? Or how did you find out?
Her mom.
Her mom told you. Did she say, Jasmine's pregnant and you're the father?
She asked me when the last time that we had sex, and I told her that it was around about Christmas time.
Miss Campbell was sleeping with her boyfriend and Mr. Golden right about the same time, and she didn't use protection with them. Mr. Golden believes that this boyfriend never existed because he hasn't seen her, and even her mother has never seen him. Mr. Golden believes it's all just made up to spite him. Things get even more interesting when Ms. Campbell's mother comes in to testify on behalf of Mr. Golden.
This other boyfriend that she says she had?
No, ma'am, I did not.
You've never seen this guy?
No, ma'am, I did not see him.
So you believe Mr. Golden is?
I believe he is the father of my grandbaby.
You
Yes.
do?
Yes, ma'am.
Why do you think your daughter would make up that she has another boyfriend?
Because she hates him.
These are huge accusations. Why would anyone make a phantom boyfriend just not acknowledge the real father of her baby? And how much does Ms. Campbell really dislike Mr. Golden? People who dislike one another don't usually sleep together, but Ms. Campbell just admitted that she'd slept with Mr. Golden even after burning his clothes. Around the time Ms. Campbell gave birth, the hate was so strong that she stopped Mr. Robert from coming to see her child. But things get even spookier.
Your Honor,
Did
her
they-
birth certificate don't have no name on it, Your Honor.
Pass that to me, please, Jerome. What did you say, Mr. Golden? Speak louder.
Her birth certificate doesn't have any name on it.
Listed under father's name, nobody.
Nobody.
Now you saying, Miss Campbell, that you know who the child's father is and it was your boyfriend and you know it's definitely not Mr. Golden. Why is your boyfriend's name on his birth certificate?
I want to be the father.
The question now is, how could Ms. Campbell have a boyfriend that no one has ever seen? Ms. Campbell keeps saying that Mr. Robert can't play the role of a father because he can't provide for the child. But that doesn't mean anything when it comes down to the question of whether the child child is Mr. Roberts or not. To make matters even more confusing, Ms. Campbell's mom says Mr. Robert and Ms. Campbell are probably still having sex.
Maybe because
When
you're
I
not
was
there.
there was a bag of cheese puffs, 50 cents, not even the dollar
Your
bag.
Honor, he
the
has
50
bought
cent bag.
money over to my
Not
house
even the dollar
for
bag.
the baby.
'Cause
They've
he's
been
not
having
the
sex
child's
for 4
father.
years. They probably still having sex.
And then he just almost giggled, so I know that's true.
True.
No, it's not true.
True.
Now, Ms. Campbell's argument makes some sense. She and Mr. Robert might have had sex, but it wasn't around the time that Andrea was conceived. At least that's what she wants us to believe. Anyway, let's get to the DNA results and put this issue to bed.
Mr. Golden, you are not the father.
Huh? Thank you.
Come on back in, Mr. Golden. You can have a seat if you need to.
I just want to go.
I'm sorry, Mr. Golden, come sit down. It's gonna be okay, babe. I know you're upset.
I don't want to go.
Ms. Campbell, you've maintained that he was not the child's father.
Yes, Your Honor.
Cases on paternity court usually involve a man and a woman, but this one seems to be between a much older woman and a younger lady, and the older lady has a very sharp mouth. Ms. Audrey says that Ms. Martin is taking advantage of her son by pinning a baby that isn't his on him, and Ms. Martin says that's a complete lie.
Ms. Autry, you say the defendant is taking advantage of your son by pinning a baby on him, and you have physical proof that her 2-year-old daughter, Skyla, is not your grandchild. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Martin, you claim that the plaintiff is a monster-in-law and is denying your daughter only because she doesn't like you. You need help and hope to get some once the results are revealed. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
It kind of looks like Ms. Audrey is acting for the camera with all her sassiness. And what does she mean they call her Queen DNA? How many times has she done this with her wife's kids? Does she go through this routine every time? That must be stressful. Let's see what Ms. Martin has to say about all of this entrapment business.
You don't have to like her, but you can use respectful
I
language.
was not the mother of my grandchild.
Okay, Your
Where
Honor.
I'm from, they call me Queen DNA. So until I get a DNA test to prove that's my grandbaby, I am not accepting the responsibility for no baby that's not none of mine.
But you was claiming her at first, though, Miss Autry.
All right, hold on. Let me come to you, Ms. Martin.
This is going to be a really tough one because Ms. Audrey doesn't look like she's going to let anyone talk, not even the judge. Now, we know that Ms. Martin got married to Ms. Audrey's child against Ms. Audrey's wishes, and Ms. Audrey went to great lengths to stop that wedding from happening.
That's my husband.
That's your yes, your husband.
My husband.
So he's still your husband.
Getting married
Yes,
to
ma'am.
you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Cause I got
Okay.
a phone call, y'all getting married down the street from my house. So I was on my way walking down there to start the marriage to my friend. That's why I was going out to go start the wedding.
She tried to stop
when I
the
got
wedding,
dropped
Your
off
Honor.
down
She
there,
tried to
they
stop the
moved
wedding.
your way to Cliff so you can get married to him.
That's crazy. Ms. Martin left her own wedding venue and moved to a different location just to get married just because of Ms. Audrey. Ms. Audrey said she would have followed them if she had a car and would have stopped the wedding. There's nothing crazier than that. So why does Ms. Audrey hate Ms. Martin so much?
No, really. Explain to me what's
I got
going
a
on.
phone call that she was getting married down the street from my house. So I got out of my bed and I started walking down the street to where she was getting married at. A friend sent me walking and she offered me a ride.
How did you find out she was getting married?
Someone called me and told me.
Your son didn't tell you?
No.
No, he didn't tell me.
It gets even crazier. When Ms. Audrey went to the hospital and kept acting crazy, she was removed from the premises. This made her even more angry and made her hate her supposed daughter-in-law so much more. But Ms. Audrey must have some evidence for her claims, right? Well, it turns out she does.
So, Miss Autry, you said that's not my grandchild instantly.
Yes. She don't have the toes like my son.
Yes,
His
she
toes
does.
cross.
Yes, she
His big
does.
toe is here and his this toe next
They
to his toe.
overlap.
It crawls over like that. And I have proof, Your Honor, that that is not his baby because her toes don't do that.
Yes, they do,
and she
Your
don't have
Honor.
the thick eyebrows that me and my son and my daughter have.
She's
so
two.
I know
They
that's
haven't
not my
grew
son's
yet.
baby.
I mean, they grew.
All right.
It kind of looks like Ms. Audrey's evidence is pretty bad since it's inconclusive. Importantly, even if the baby's toes didn't cross, it wouldn't mean anything as that doesn't indicate whether a child is biologically related to her or not.
Anyway, so Ms. Martin, has your husband accepted the baby or does he have doubts?
No, he doesn't have any doubts. It's her. She hasn't even tried to bond with the baby, so of course you're gonna think she's not yours.
Why would
You
I
haven't
bond
tried
with
to
the baby
bond
unless
with
I
her.
know for
You
a
haven't
fact
tried
it's
to
my
get to know
son?
her.
Had I had
But
them, I
Skyla's
did my
2
own
years.
DNA
Wait,
test to make
she's
sure.
2 years old.
But there's a smoking gun we have not heard about yet. Ms. Martin once told her husband that Skyla, her baby, didn't belong to him. She did this because her husband left her to be with another woman. And at that time, Ms. Martin had also slept with another man. So Ms. Audrey might seem crazy, but this case isn't so cut and dry. To make things even more interesting, that man that Ms. Martin slept with also appeared in court.
Wait a minute now. Miss Cooper, this is your ex-boyfriend?
Yes, Your Honor. That was a mistake, Your Honor.
So, Ms. Martin, you slept with your sister-in-law's boyfriend?
Yes,
Now
Your
who
Honor.
crazy, Your Honor?
That was before, Your Honor. That was a mistake.
How did that happen?
When my husband was away, Your Honor, he was, doing a lot of different things with other women.
He also says that Ms. Martin once told him he was the biological father once on the phone. Now, that's a twist we didn't see coming, but it's time to reveal everything and put this matter to bed. Who is really the father of Skyla? Let's find out.
Pertaining to whether Mr. Martin or Mr. God is the father of 2-year-old Skyla Martin. The biological father is Mr. Martin.
I'll take that for $200, Your Honor. I told you.
You are the grandmother, Miss Audrey.